Hello, everybody. My name is Gerard. I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 25th of 2018. I have a home group that is Knuckleheads. We meet 6:30 out of Louisville, Kentucky. I have a sponsor. His name is Andre F. Um, I'm going to talk in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, what I'm like now, in the same way that my sponsor taught me. Uh, So here we go. And thank you to Regatane for being here. Thanks, Stu, for inviting me. Uh, yeah. All right. So, Gerard Alcoholic. My story begins. Okay. Uh, my story begins in a very funny way. So, I always thought that coming in to this program when I was first court ordered when I was 22 years old, that there was no way, no how that I was going to have a problem with alcohol. Just because I didn't really take my first drink until I was 21, the summer of turning 21. The truth be told is that the fantastic thing about this program is it doesn't matter, that's not one of the qualifications of like, oh, you have to drink before you're 21 or like you have to have these kind of certain habits. The things that make me an alcoholic is that I'm powerless over alcohol and my life becomes unmanageable. Truth be told that it took a long time for me to finally sit in these rooms and try to get this program before I was finally able to understand that, that irritable, restless, and discontent is my natural state. That is how I exist before I ever take a drink or a drug. And my sponsor, I'm so grateful that he was able to be patient enough with me to talk me through that and kind of, because for that was it. Like I wanted people to know, I'm probably more likely just crazy because honestly, before I ever took a drink or a drug, I had these crazy, when the book talks about irritable, restless, and discontent, like that was my natural state. I was neurotic, I was obsessive, and those things were just, those happened long before the substances ever entered the picture. Always did feel like as a young kid that I kind of felt like the odd guy out. I felt like everybody showed up a few days earlier to school before I ever got there, and they got like a thick packet on how to behave, how to walk, how to talk, and how to fit in. And for somehow, some way, every year I just missed out on that. This is a feeling that I had never had any scientific proof of it. But truth be told, when I was 21 years old, when I was 20 years old, that summer, about four of my friends jumped over 21 before I did. And I felt just like, we already feel like the odd guy out. And then that year just kind of compiled those feelings of just like friends were going out and I was just sitting at home, just kind of like, man, I wish hanging out with my buddies. But so what ended up happening was I turned 21. And even though I had a lot of fear prior to that, drinking, I can't diagnose anybody else. I do have two uncles who have drinking themselves to death. My father isn't one of us, but at the same time, he has some familiar habits. And I can't diagnose anybody but myself. But truth be told, I was always afraid of drinking. I was afraid of it because I had seen a lot of consequences. And I can't blame my father. I can't blame any of my relatives because I feel like a lot of them were perfect examples of what not to do in life. I had firsthand experience of kind of what drinking does to a marriage, what drinking does to a family. And those are things I didn't want for my life. But the thing was, if you sat inside my skin, if you heard what was it like inside my head of how I felt like everybody was looking at me and judging and just kind of thinking like, man, you'd probably have a drink. And that was it. Is after those years of just the awkwardness of the feeling of just insecurities of everything. That summer, drink was slid my way, and I did not have the resolve. I took a drink. If drunk took me, from my very first drunk, I was a blackout drinker, and I thought that was once again, wonderfully enough, that's not one of the qualifiers. An alcoholic doesn't need to be a blackout drinker in order to be an alcoholic. But the thing was, I was. From the first time I had a drink that night, I got hammered drunk. I puked all over my sister's toilet. I guess I made it to the bathroom, puked on the toilet, passed out in the shower. And that was the thing is, I thought that was great. I thought that was fantastic. For the first about 2-3 years of my drinking career, I thought that the blackout was almost the purpose of drinking. And I remember the first time somebody was like, I remember the first time that I was getting asked by a few friends, like, oh, did you black out? And or like, have you guys ever blacked out or something? And I kind of looked at them like, isn't that like the point? And they're like, no, like that's brain damage going on. But that's neither here nor there. The important thing is, I'm not going to give too much of a drunken log because I feel like the speakers that I enjoy the most are the ones who kind of guide me to sobriety. I feel like a lot of people who are in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous got here because of the fact that we love drinking. We know what happens when we drink, and terrible consequences happen. And I'm no exception to that rule. So the thing was, I got my first DUI when I was 23 years old. Consequences didn't take long to catch up to me. I was a kind of drinker who was off and running from the very start. I had a lot of guilt, remorse, and shame to go along with it that kind of kept fueling that fire. And at first I was able to maintain. I was able to maintain, school. I was able to maintain grades. But I soon picked up relationships that kind of just alienated me from my friends. Started losing those, friends, as it talks about in Bill's story, how we lose those things that are most important to us. And drinking very quickly within about 2 years stopped being a luxury and started becoming a necessity. And it was at that point that I started, I started dropping out. I started messing up things in my life. I had a scholarship, I blew that. And thankfully, those consequences happened fast. But after about 3 years, I already had, I received my first felony charges for assault, just because those are commonplace for blackout drinker. And but that was the thing, is enough hadn't happened yet. So the thing was, I was recommended to go to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I did so at the University of Louisville's campus. I remember walking in and just hearing everybody say welcome. And the thing was, that was hilarious, was I remember leaving that meeting, because the entire time I was there, keep in mind, I wasn't ready to quit. The entire time I was listening to everybody, listening to them talk about how they lost law degrees. I heard a couple of divorcees talk about their situation. I heard a couple of people talk about how, their kids won't talk to them. And trying to translate that message to a 23-year-old kid doesn't really get there, because, I'm not married. I don't have kids yet. I don't have a business, but I do remember thinking crystal clear, if it ever gets half that bad, I'll stop. That was the one thing that I gathered from that. Thank you very much for the information. But here in Kentucky, they do this terrible thing to you. I don't know if they do anywhere else. But they have this magazine called Crime Times. And I had a couple friends be like, hey, we saw your face in Crime Times. And I was like, gosh, damn it. But I remember feeling the guilt, shame, and remorse of just like, man, I was in Crime Times like 3 times in 1 year. This is enough. Like, I'm done. Like, thank you for the information. I get it. Don't drink. And if I wasn't an alcoholic, that probably would have been enough. But wonderfully enough, as your speaker here tonight, I can thoroughly say that was not enough. Fear didn't keep me sober. Self-knowledge wasn't enough to keep me sober. And that was the thing. I was off and running. I was also a traveling drunk. Through my time, I ended up getting in trouble all the way from Connecticut, Ohio, and Kentucky, Indiana, 2 parts of Kentucky. But by the grace of God, on the last DUI that happened on October 17th of 2017, by the grace of God, that's my last one. What happened was, I would come into these rooms, I'd get sober for a period of time, I would never work the steps, and I'd go back out. This happened for about 4 years, and that was the thing, is I'd get enough to get, the lawyers off my back, I'd get enough to get my family to trust me again, I'd get enough to get, give myself a sense that I got this, and then I'd go back out. Everything would go crazy. Well, in that time, I was able to finish off a degree at the University of Louisville. I was able to travel abroad for a scholarship. I was able to find a partner who wanted to marry me. And the funny thing about it is, I got married in 2017 on October, Friday the 13th. I kid you not. If there wasn't any more sign that we needed, that was a pretty good omen. But the thing was, I got married on Friday the 13th. I was traveling for work at the time. I was out of town. I was in Ohio, and I remember drinking in the hotel room. I remember thinking that I ran out of cigarettes, and I remember thinking I pulled up my phone. Google said that there was a speedway 0.8 miles away. And I remember thinking crystal clear, nobody gets pulled over in 0.8 miles, man. And that was true. On the way up there, I did not get pulled over, but on the way back, I did. And Ohio State does not play around when it comes to DUIs. And yeah, that's DUI third. They do this wonderful thing called civil forfeiture. That was the thing when I had these increments of sobriety, things would go good. I bought a new car, got married, got a degree, had a dream job. All those fantastic things happened. And that was it, I had gotten all the things in my life that I thought would fix the problem. I thought if I had a good looking woman, if I thought I had, the love in my life, if I thought I had that, that nice car, or if I had that job, like, man, if I had that kind of money, then these things wouldn't be a problem anymore. And that was it, I was on the other side of that and it was still a problem. My drinking was still unmanageable. It didn't matter what the circumstances were, I was still there. The problem was still there. And, that night when I was sitting on that jail floor, I had met the man who I'd come to ask to be my sponsor in 2013. That's the thing. He did a lot of wonderful things in this program. He attended meetings. He reached out to the newcomer. He had men's groups that he would, on an annual basis, do step studies with. He would come into Our Lady of Peace and, talk to people who were coming in from the downstairs area in robes. That's how I met him. And that was the thing he did a lot of things. He stayed away from those outside issues. And when I met him in 2013, like I said, I wasn't ready to say that, I had a problem. Nonetheless, I had a problem with anything outside of alcohol. But on October 17th, 2017, enough had been enough. I had made that awful call where, you're calling a loved one, you're calling mom, you're calling your sister, you're calling people from jail. And, when Securus is like, we're recording this line, you may start your phone call now. I've heard that more times than I'd ever want to count. But the thing was, things were different now because I had done that with mom. I had done that with my sisters, which had filled me up with shame and remorse. But I had invited somebody that I truly loved into my life, and they were now a part of that picture. That was something, and I felt like something deep down inside of me, because those things I had experienced increments of sobriety in my life, and I knew that my life could be better than that. And I felt like on that night, something just truly shattered. And that was my will that I could do this on my own. After that night, when I got out, I was bailed out by my father. My father and I have had an interesting relationship. Like I said, he's not one of us, and he thinks that, a good amount of self-will could cure anything. I kind of got to that point just for today that I understand that, Gerard Cruz gets Gerard Cruz in trouble about every single time. I've done it with every kind of, combination, with every kind of life situation, with every kind of job, with every kind of, relationship that I can imagine. And every time I still do it the same way. So on October 18th, I called Andre F. I told him that I had enough, and he said, what's different this time? And I told him that I kind of gave him a layout of the situation, what my life was looking at that moment. I said that I know that I can't keep me clean and sober. Will you be my sponsor? He didn't say yes right away. He said he said some basic things about we're gonna call me again tomorrow. We'll start talking on a daily basis. And the thing that was beautiful is Andre caught me busy in the steps right away. He asked me to get a job that kept me in town, which kind of really wasn't an option at that point. I didn't get fired from that job, but the thing was it wasn't going to be possible to try to go through this program and have a job where I'm out of town 3 weeks out of the month. I got a job that kept me in town. That was for half the money. I took a 50% pay cut. It was a job that, at the time I thought was beneath me, but the thing was it was something that gave me the space in my life to allow sobriety in. And that was the thing, is sobriety took front seat to my life. It wasn't easy for me and my wife. It wasn't easy at all. I would say that in those first about 5 months of sobriety, a lot of heavy things happened. Luckily, the state of Ohio didn't convict me of a DUI third. My grandfather died. I almost lost a job. The financial insecurity that I experienced from taking a 50% job cut, which from that standpoint was like my dream job. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be an archaeological field technician. Indiana Jones Jr., that was me, man. And I had to quit that. But the thing was, none of those things caused, this group is called the Fifth Dimension. The book talks about the fourth dimension of existence, like internal stable happiness non-contingent upon external circumstances. I remember the first time I read that, and I thought that was just the biggest load of malarkey I've ever saw. But the thing is when I got to this program and I started working the steps, and that was the thing is I always did the like 1, 2, 3, and I'd go back out. I'd start getting to step 4, and that was the thing is like I wish somebody would have told me that like the first person you have to be your sponsor, you're not married to. You're not like full on locked in. This is it. This is how it's going to be. I've gone through about 4 different sponsors before I got to Andre, and the thing is the first 2 didn't really understand, in my opinion, what they're doing. Who knows? Maybe today I'd see him and I'd be like, hey, you did the best you could with what you had. But the thing was I had kind of hit some spots with them where it was just the steps weren't working. And luckily, when the first time I heard Andre F. talk, he said a lot of things that I could not argue with him about. And the reason why I couldn't argue with him is because he was talking about his own experience. He was talking about his situation. And he was explaining my life, my thoughts, my rationale behind why I drank to a T. And the dude didn't even know my name. And that's the beautiful thing about this program. When we come in and we talk about our experience, our strength, and our hope, we get to talk to other people because, wonderfully enough, I'm not that unique. Andre described my situation, and that was it. When we went through these steps, I was able to fully understand what were the causes and conditions. I had a relationship with power that's greater than myself, but the thing was, it was on my terms. I never understood what it meant to have a God that was personal to me. And through going through the steps, I was able to reestablish a relationship with the power that's greater than me, a relationship with others, a relationship with self. And the thing is it's really hard when you get married and 3 days later you get a DUI. My wife didn't know that I was drinking on the road. And that was, if you ever want to know when the honeymoon period in a marriage ends, that's when it ends right there. When you go, when you call them up 3 days later and you say like, hey, I'm out of town. I got a DUI, that $15,000 car we just bought. It now belongs to the state of Ohio. Honeymoon over. But the thing that was wonderful about it was because of the fact that I was able to embark on this program, I was able to do some real honest things that Gerard Cruz would have never had the fortitude to try to attempt. And that was when my wife started asking those questions, like, how long have you been drinking? How long has this been going on? I would have ran, I would have lied, I would have said anything other than the truth. But the thing was, I had asked that my will be turned over to power that's greater than myself. And because I was able to do that, because on a day-to-day basis, and only one day at a time, this book talks about how the fact that we have a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I'm grateful that that's the way that the program works, because there were a lot of times in that period I talked about, my grandfather dying. And the thing is, I'm from Arizona, so there was no way I was going to leave Louisville, Kentucky, fly back home to Tucson, Arizona, keep, all the balls and whistles rolling here. So I had to stay here when my grandfather passed away. And the thing was, for half of the stuff that happened in that 5-month period, my old habits would have ran, would have drank, would have used, would have done 100 other things other than what I was able to do in that time. But because of the fact that I had a fellowship of men around me, because I had a home group that I was accountable to, because I had a sponsor, I was able to walk through that with grace. And how I knew this program was truly working, aside from the things I just said, was so the state of Ohio decided that I was going to spend a small bit of time in jail. I was going to have to go up there. I was going to have to turn myself in. From where I'm at right here, it's about a 5.5-hour drive one way up there. So it wasn't anything easy. So I told everybody in my home group that, like, hey, I'm going away for a couple of days. And they're like, all right. And they knew what it was for. So I go, I get up there, and the funniest thing happened. And I could say that today, but at the time I didn't think it was that funny. I get up to the Ohio State jail, and they're like, hey, we're full. You need to come back. And I was like, what? Like, you want me to turn myself back in? This is like a 5-hour drive for me. This isn't easy. And they're like, correction officers don't care. They send me home. So I go home that night. That was on a Thursday. So I walk into my home group, and everybody sees me. And how I knew I was experiencing spiritual growth in that moment is I had walked in, and everybody laughed They're like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in jail. And I told them the story, and they laughed in my face because, us alcoholics are, we could we could laugh at other people's situations. And the thing is Gerard of the past, while I was still in the madness, would not be able to withstand that humiliation. I would have taken that so personal. I'm very sensitive. I would have been like, they're laughing at me, they're humiliating me. These people are just laughing at my pain. Oh my God. Like I would have made it all about me. The world is out to get me. But the thing is in that moment, I was able to laugh with them. I was able to be like, yeah, that's pretty funny. Like I got to do that again. Man, there's been a lot of things that have allowed me to grow. Fantastically enough, my wife and I were able to sort things out through a lot of work that none of which would have been possible without the honesty that I was able to come to in the program. I love that this program encourages me to practice these principles in all my affairs. I love the fact that this program teaches me that one of the most crucial things that I've learned from this program is to understand that, I am selfish, I am self-centered. And the thing is when things happen today, like they did in those first 5 months, I'm able to understand that I was able to walk through those things and other things on a day-to-day basis because I'm no longer the center of the universe. I'm now able to understand that when things happen, there's not a universe aligning to make Gerard Cruz feel uncomfortable. I'm able to exist in a relationship and not be the center of it, to not dominate my partner. I'm able to have a job where I'm not constantly thinking I'm above this job. There are a lot of things that truly have come to pass because of this program and how I get to practice these principles in all my affairs. But yeah, my name's Gerard. I am an alcoholic.